My name is Drew Taylor, and if you're expecting some heroic tale about a noble man wronged by fate, you're reading the wrong story. I'm 39, work in IT security consulting, and until 3 months ago, I was married to a woman who Instagrammed our anniversary dinner, including the receipt, because transparency builds trust with followers. Madison Taylor, my soon-to-be ex-wife, has 43,000 Instagram followers who hang on her every word about lifestyle optimization and treating yourself. What they don't know is that every treat-yourself moment comes straight from our joint checking account, and Maddie's idea of financial planning involves buying another designer handbag because it's an investment piece. I should have seen it coming when she started working late at the marketing agency, claiming she needed to network more effectively. Maddie's networking apparently involved expensive dinners at restaurants I couldn't pronounce and jewelry from brand collaborations that never seemed to require any actual work. The first real warning came during her friend Renee's birthday party last month. I was nursing a drink in the corner, watching Maddie hold court with her usual crew. Renee, the mean girl who somehow made gossip sound like journalism, and Amber, who enabled every bad decision with enthusiastic nodding. "Drew's so vanilla," Renee said, not bothering to lower her voice. "I mean, when was the last time he surprised you with anything exciting?" Maddie giggled, that particular laugh she reserved for conversations I wasn't supposed to hear. "Oh, you know how Ike guys are. Very methodical. Unlike certain real estate moguls we know," Amber added with a wink. That's when I first heard about Greg Bixby. Greg owns half the luxury developments in our mid-sized city, drives a car worth more than most people's houses, and according to the local business journal, brings passion to every property transaction. Apparently, he brings passion to more than just real estate. I started paying attention after that party. Maddie's phone habits changed. More secretive texting, more giggles at inappropriate times, more work events that required new outfits. She created a second Instagram account, claiming it was for more personal content with close friends only. Being in IT security has its advantages. I know how to find things people think they've hidden. Before we deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Maddie's secret account was a masterpiece of barely concealed infidelity. Photos of expensive wine with captions like, "Someone knows my taste." Pictures of hotel room views with, "Grateful for friends who show me the finer things," and dozens of direct messages with someone identified only as G. The messages made my stomach turn. Not because of the emotional betrayal. I'd suspected that for weeks, but because of how stupid they both were about it. "Can't wait for our next property tour," G had written. "Your expertise in handling is unmatched," Maddie replied. "Drew has no idea what he's missing. He's too busy with his computers to notice anything." They weren't wrong about that last part. I was busy with computers. Specifically, I was busy documenting every message, every photo, every careless digital footprint they left behind. The final confirmation came at the Riverside Development launch party 2 weeks ago. Maddie insisted we attend because networking is essential for both our careers. I watched her work the room, playing the devoted wife while texting someone constantly. Then I saw them. Greg Bixby looked exactly like Central Casting's idea of a successful real estate developer. Silver at the temples, expensive suit, confident handshake for everyone in the room. He was also married, I learned from the event program, to someone named Paige who apparently preferred staying home to attending industry functions. I watched Greg and Maddie's careful dance around each other all evening, the casual touches that lasted too long, the way they managed to disappear from the main reception area at the same time, the knowing looks from Renee, who clearly thought she was witnessing some sophisticated adult arrangement. When Maddie returned 20 minutes later with slightly smeared lipstick and Greg's cologne clinging to her dress, I knew my marriage was over. The only question was how to handle the aftermath. That question answered itself the next morning when I tried to buy coffee on my way to work and my card was declined, then declined again at the gas station. When I checked our joint account online, the balance was $37. Maddie had transferred $18,000 to her personal account the previous evening. The memo line read, "Investment in future opportunities." I sat in my car outside the gas station, watching other people go about their normal Tuesday morning routines, and felt something shift inside me. Not anger, exactly. Something colder and more calculating. Maddie wanted to play games with money and social media and public humiliation. She wanted to treat our marriage like content for her followers while planning her exit strategy with Greg. I could play games too. I just played them differently. The beauty of working in IT security is that you learn to think like both the system and the person trying to break it. You understand vulnerabilities, pressure points, and how small actions can cascade into major failures. Maddie's first vulnerability was her complete dependence on our joint accounts for her lifestyle. Her second was her need for public validation. Greg's vulnerability was his reputation in a business built entirely on trust and image. I started with the money. Wednesday morning, I walked into First National Bank with a folder of documents and a very reasonable request. The branch manager, a tired-looking woman named Patricia, reviewed my paperwork with professional efficiency. "So, you want to freeze joint account access pending separation proceedings," she said. "That's certainly your right, Mr. Taylor. Both parties need to be present for any withdrawals over $50 until this is resolved." "Exactly. I want everything documented and legal. The freeze takes effect immediately. Your wife will need to bring proper identification and have you present for any significant transactions." I thanked Patricia and drove to my office, where I spent the morning working on legitimate client projects and the afternoon researching Greg Bixby's business practices. Public records are wonderfully revealing when you know how to read them. Greg's company, Bixby Premium Properties, had several interesting characteristics. Multiple LLC structures that seemed designed more for tax avoidance than business efficiency. Partnership agreements with investors who preferred staying anonymous. And a pattern of acquiring properties just before major development announcements that would increase their value. Nothing obviously illegal, but definitely the kind of aggressive tactics that made competitors nervous and wives suspicious. I was still researching when my phone buzzed with increasingly frantic texts from Maddie. "Card not working at Nordstrom. Can you call the bank?" "Drew, this is embarrassing. My friends are here. Something's wrong with our account. Fix this now." I didn't respond. Instead, I drove to Nordstrom and positioned myself where I could watch the handbag section without being seen. Maddie was there with Renee and Amber, trying to make a purchase that would have fed a family for a month. The sales associate, a young man who clearly wanted to be anywhere else, kept running the card through different machines while Maddie's voice got higher and more insistent. "Try it again. There must be some mistake." "I'm sorry, ma'am, but the card is being declined. Do you have another form of payment?" Renee was recording everything on her phone, probably for some social media story about their shopping adventure. The recording captured Maddie's growing panic as she tried 3 different cards, all linked to accounts I'd already secured. "This is ridiculous," Maddie announced to the growing crowd of shoppers. "My husband obviously screwed something up with the bank." That's when I walked over. "Actually," I said, appearing beside them with perfect timing, "I secured our accounts pending our separation. To protect both our interests during this difficult time." The silence was magnificent. Renee's phone was still recording. Amber's mouth hung open. The sales associate suddenly found paperwork that required his immediate attention. Maddie's face went through several color changes. "What are you talking about?" "Our separation, Maddie. I filed preliminary paperwork yesterday. Didn't you get the email I sent to both your accounts?" I had indeed sent an email, very professional and legal sounding, explaining that I was protecting our assets during marriage counseling. I'd copied her parents and her business partners because transparency builds trust. "You can't do this," she hissed. "Actually, I can." Patricia at First National explained the whole process. Very reasonable, very legal. Renee was still recording, which meant this conversation would be preserved forever. I smiled at her phone. "Hi, Renee's followers. Just wanted to clarify that any purchases made on our joint accounts need both signatures now. Maddie's welcome to use her own money for shopping trips, of course." That's when Maddie made her first major mistake. Instead of leaving quietly, she decided to make a scene. "This is financial abuse," she declared, loudly enough for everyone in the section to hear. "You're trying to control me. I'm trying to make sure we both have resources during our separation. You transferred $18,000 yesterday without discussing it with me. I'm just evening the playing field." The crowd was growing. Someone else was recording now. Maddie's public humiliation was becoming actual public humiliation, witnessed by strangers and preserved on social media. "That money was for business investments," she said. "What business would that be? Your Instagram account? Or Greg Bixby's real estate ventures?" Renee stopped recording. Amber took a step back. Maddie's face went pale. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you do. G, from your private Instagram account, the one where you share photos of hotel rooms and expensive dinners, very artistic shots by the way, really captured the mood." I pulled out my phone and showed her a screenshot of one of her posts. Not the private messages, I was saving those, but one of her mysterious benefactor photos. "Anyway," I continued cheerfully, "I just wanted to make sure you understood the new account situation. Have a great shopping trip, ladies. Try the clearance section. I hear it's very reasonable." I walked away while Maddie was still processing what had just happened. Behind me, I could hear Renee and Amber asking urgent questions in low voices. By the time I got home, Maddie's public meltdown at Nordstrom was already circulating on social media. Renee had posted the video with the caption, "When keeping it real goes wrong." Several of Maddie's followers had shared it, adding their own commentary about financial responsibility and marriage drama. Maddie's carefully curated image as a successful lifestyle influencer was getting its first major crack. But I was just getting started. My sister Kate called Thursday morning while I was drinking coffee and reading the increasingly frantic comments on Maddie's social media accounts. "Drew, what the hell is going on? Mom saw some video of Maddie having a meltdown at the mall." Kate was 2 years older than me, had spent 8 years as a police officer before moving into private security, and possessed an impressive ability to cut through nonsense. She was also the only family member who'd never been completely charmed by Maddie's social media persona. "Maddie's been having an affair with Greg Bixby. I'm handling it." "By freezing her credit cards? That's pretty cold, even for you." "She transferred $18,000 out of our joint account to fund whatever she's planning with Greg. I'm just making sure there's something left to split when the lawyers get involved." Kate was quiet for a moment. "You said Greg Bixby, the real estate guy? You know him?" "I know his reputation. He's been investigated twice for bid manipulation on city development projects. Never charged, but there were questions about how he always seems to know which properties to buy right before major announcements." This was interesting. "What kind of questions?" "The kind that suggest he has inside information from city planning meetings, or very good instincts about where the mayor's friends want to build things. I filed this information away for future use. Can you find out more?" "I can make some calls, but Drew, if you're planning some kind of revenge scheme, be smart about it. Don't do anything that could backfire legally." "Everything I'm doing is completely legal. I'm just making sure the truth comes out in the most public way possible." That's what worries me. After Kate hung up, I spent the morning researching Greg's business connections and the afternoon working on what I privately called Phase 2 of my response strategy. Maddie had spent years building her influence through careful image management and strategic networking. She understood that perception was reality in the social media world, and she'd cultivated an audience that trusted her recommendations about everything from skincare to financial planning. What she didn't understand was that the same tools she used to build her image could be used to destroy it. I started by creating anonymous accounts on several platforms and began sharing some of Maddie's more hypocritical posts. The one where she talked about the importance of financial honesty in marriage, posted the same day she'd hidden a $3,000 shopping spree. The one about supporting local businesses, posted from a luxury resort in another state. I didn't add commentary. I just shared her own words alongside publicly available information about our separation and her recent behavior. Let her followers draw their own conclusions. Then I turned my attention to Greg. Kate called back Friday afternoon with interesting news. Greg Bixby is in the middle of his biggest deal ever. He's trying to put together a development group to buy the old Morrison industrial site. $60 million project, and he's the lead partner. What's the timeline? City Council votes on the zoning changes next month. If it passes, Greg and his partners make a fortune. If it doesn't, they lose their deposits and development fees. How much are we talking about? Greg personally guaranteed about $8 million in loans and deposits. If this deal falls through, he's in serious financial trouble. This was better than I'd hoped. Greg wasn't just risking his reputation by having an affair with my wife. He was risking everything on a business deal that required maintaining the trust of very conservative investors. I spent the weekend learning everything I could about the Morrison industrial development. The investor group included several prominent local families, a pension fund, and 2 banks that had very strict policies about the personal conduct of their business partners. Monday morning, I implemented Phase 3. I created a professional-looking email account and sent a carefully worded message to the development group's attorney, copying several of the major investors. The email didn't make any accusations. It simply suggested that they might want to review the personal conduct clauses in their partnership agreement, and attached several of Maddie's Instagram posts showing her business meetings with Greg at expensive restaurants and hotels. The posts didn't prove anything illegal, but they painted a picture of Greg using company resources for personal entertainment, while his wife was notably absent from any business functions. I also sent copies of Maddie's posts to Greg's wife, Paige, along with a polite note expressing concern about whether Greg was properly representing his family's interests in his business dealings. Tuesday afternoon, Kate called with an update. Your email stirred up some interest. I heard from a friend at the bank that they're asking Greg for additional documentation about his business expenses. Apparently, someone raised questions about entertainment costs and professional boundaries. Any word from Greg directly? He tried calling you twice yesterday. When you didn't answer, he called your office. I had indeed ignored Greg's calls. I wanted him worried and off balance before our inevitable confrontation. That confrontation came Wednesday evening. I was working in my home office when the doorbell rang. Through the security camera, I could see Greg standing on my front porch, trying to look casual and confident but clearly agitated. I opened the door with my phone already recording. Greg, what brings you to my neighborhood? We need to talk, Drew, man to man. About what? About whatever game you think you're playing. It needs to stop. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. If Greg wanted to have this conversation where the neighbors could hear it, that was his choice. I'm not playing any games, Greg. I'm just protecting my interests during a difficult time. By sending emails to my business partners, by harassing my wife, I sent publicly available information to people who might find it relevant. If that's harassment, then every newspaper in the country is guilty of harassment. Greg moved closer, trying to use his height advantage to intimidate me. You're messing with things you don't understand. I understand that you're having an affair with my wife. I understand that you're using business resources to fund your personal entertainment. I understand that your investors might be interested in knowing how you conduct yourself professionally. You can't prove anything. I don't have to prove anything. I just have to raise questions. In your business, Questions are almost as damaging as proof. Greg's face was getting red. If you think you can destroy my reputation to save your marriage, you're wrong. Maddie doesn't want to be married to you anymore. This isn't going to win her back. I'm not trying to win her back, Greg. I'm making sure that everyone understands exactly what kind of people they're dealing with. What's that supposed to mean? It means that actions have consequences. You decided to pursue a married woman while you're married yourself. Maddie decided to steal money from our joint account to fund her affair. I'm just making sure those decisions get the attention they deserve. Greg stepped back, apparently realizing that threatening me on my own property while I was recording wasn't his smartest move. This isn't over, he said. You're right about that. I watched him walk back to his expensive car and drive away, probably to call Maddie and plan their next move. I was looking forward to seeing what they came up with. Thursday night brought the first real storm of autumn, and with it, Greg's attempt at a more direct approach to our problem. I was working late in my home office, reviewing security footage from my various cameras, when the motion sensors picked up someone moving around my backyard. The timestamp showed 11:47 p.m., and the figure was clearly trying to avoid the main security lights. Greg had apparently decided that subtlety wasn't working. I watched him test the back door, then move to the garage side entrance. What he didn't know was that I'd upgraded my security system considerably since discovering Maddie's affair. Every entrance was monitored, every approach was recorded, and several very loud alarms were ready to wake the entire neighborhood if triggered. I let him get the garage door halfway open before activating the system. The alarm was designed to disorient intruders, and it worked perfectly. Greg stumbled backward, covering his ears as lights flooded the yard, and a recorded voice announced that police had been notified. I walked out through the main garage door, wearing a bathrobe and holding a baseball bat for effect. Greg, what a surprise. Having trouble with your own garage door? He was trying to look dignified while caught in the middle of breaking into my property. I just wanted to talk. So you decided to break into my garage at midnight during a thunderstorm. That's an interesting conversation starter. The door was unlocked. No, it wasn't. I have video of you forcing it open, along with video of you testing the other entrances and trying to disable the security camera by the fence. The sirens were getting closer. I hadn't actually called the police. The security system was set to notify me first, but Greg didn't know that. Look, Drew, this has gone far enough. We're both adults here. Adults don't break into other people's property, Greg. Adults don't have affairs with married women while their own wives are at home. Adults don't threaten people who inconvenience them. I gestured toward the garage. But since you're here, let's have that conversation you wanted. Greg looked around nervously. The storm was getting worse, and the security lights made everything look like a crime scene, which, technically, it was. Inside, I said, pointing to the garage. We can talk privately. Greg hesitated, probably realizing that following me into an enclosed space wasn't his best strategic move. But the alternative was standing in the storm while explaining to arriving police officers why he was breaking into my property. He followed me into the garage. I'd prepared for this possibility. A folding chair sat in the middle of the space, positioned where the security cameras would capture everything clearly. Extension cords and zip ties were arranged on the workbench, along with my laptop showing Greg's business partnership agreements. Sit down, Greg. I'm not sitting anywhere. This is insane. What's insane is thinking you could break into my house and intimidate me into ignoring your affair with my wife. What's insane is risking a $60 million development deal for someone who posts your private conversations on social media. Greg's eyes went to the laptop screen, where I'd displayed several of Maddie's Instagram posts alongside his business contracts. You've been busy, he said. I'm thorough. It's what I do for a living. I moved to the workbench and picked up a zip tie. Now sit down, or I'll call the actual police and let them sort out why you broke into my property. Greg sat down. Here's what's going to happen, I said, securing his hands behind the chair. You're going to call Maddie and have an honest conversation about your relationship. I'm going to record it. Then we're going to discuss how to resolve this situation like adults. This is kidnapping. This is a citizen's arrest of someone who broke into my property. Very different legal concept. I activated the recording function on my phone and dialed Maddie's number using Greg's phone. She answered on the second ring. Greg, it's late. Where are you? I'm at Drew's house, Greg said, looking at me uncertainly. What? Why? Tell her the truth, Greg. There was a problem with the development deal. Drew has been sending information to the investors. What kind of information? I nodded encouragingly. Greg was sweating despite the cool air. About us. About our relationship. The silence on the other end of the call stretched for almost 30 seconds. Maddie, Greg said finally. What exactly did he send them? Photos from your Instagram account, the private one, pictures of us at restaurants and hotels. Those don't prove anything. They don't have to prove anything, I said, loud enough for the phone to pick up. They just have to raise questions about Greg's judgment and professional conduct. Drew, are you listening to this call? I'm recording this call, Maddie, for legal documentation. This is harassment. This is evidence collection. Greg broke into my property tonight. We're having a conversation about resolving our various disputes. Greg, get out of there right now. He can't leave right now, I said. We're waiting for some friends to join us. As if on cue, Kate's car pulled into the driveway. I'd called her after the security alarm triggered, and she'd agreed to serve as a witness to whatever conversation Greg and I ended up having. Who's that? Maddie asked. My sister Kate. She's here to make sure everything stays legal and properly documented. Kate walked into the garage, took in the scene, and shook her head. Drew, what exactly are you doing? Having a conversation with someone who broke into my house. Greg was just explaining to Maddie how their affair has been affecting his business relationships. Kate looked at Greg, who was trying to maintain some dignity while zip-tied to a folding chair. Did you actually break in here? The door was unlocked, Greg muttered. No, it wasn't, Kate and I said simultaneously. Greg, Maddie's voice came through the phone speaker. Just tell them whatever they want to hear and get out of there. What I want to hear, I said, is an honest explanation of your financial arrangements, specifically where the $18,000 Maddie transferred from our joint account is going and how it relates to your business dealings. Greg looked at Kate, then at me, then at the phone. It was a loan, he said finally. For what? For the Morrison development. We needed additional capital for the environmental studies. So you borrowed money from my wife, who stole it from our joint account, to fund your business deal. It wasn't stealing, it was her money too. Actually, Kate said, if the account requires both signatures for large withdrawals and she made the transfer without Drew's knowledge or consent, it could be considered theft. The silence from the phone was deafening. Maddie? Greg said. I'm thinking. Think faster, I said, because I'm about to call the actual police and let them sort out the breaking and entering, the unauthorized financial transfers, and whatever other laws have been broken tonight. What do you want? Maddie's voice was smaller now, less defiant. I want the $18,000 returned to our joint account. I want a written statement about your affair and the financial arrangements. And I want both of you to stay away from me while the lawyers handle our divorce. And if we do that, then I'll consider not sharing the recording of this conversation with Greg's business partners and your social media followers. Greg was staring at me with something approaching respect. You've thought this through. I told you I'm thorough. Kate cleared her throat. Drew, you need to let him go now. You've made your point. I cut the zip ties and stepped back. Greg rubbed his wrists and stood up slowly. The money will be back in your account tomorrow, he said. All of it, plus interest. Plus interest. Greg picked up his phone. Maddie was still on the line, but she'd stopped talking. Maddie, I'll call you tomorrow. We need to discuss our options. There are no options. she said quietly, and hung up. Greg walked to the garage door, then turned back. This doesn't end here, Drew. Yes, it does, because if you come near my property again, or if you try to retaliate in any way, I'll release everything I have about your business practices and personal conduct. And trust me, I have a lot more than what I've shown you tonight. After Greg left, Kate and I stood in the garage listening to the storm. That was either very smart or very stupid, she said. Probably both. What's your next move? I looked at the laptop screen, where Greg's business documents were still displayed alongside Maddie's social media posts. I'm going to let them make the next move. They're both panicked now, and panicked people make mistakes. And when they make those mistakes, I'll be ready to document them. The $18,000 appeared in our joint account Friday morning, along with an additional $200 that Greg probably thought covered interest and bank fees. What he didn't realize was that returning the money was just the beginning of his problems, not the end. Maddie tried calling me 6 times before noon. I let every call go to voicemail and listened to her messages while working on what I'd started thinking of as the final phase. Drew, we need to talk about this reasonably. I know you're angry, but we can work something out. Greg is willing to compensate you for any inconvenience. This is getting out of hand. People are asking questions. My followers are starting to notice the drama. This is affecting my business. Fine, don't answer, but this isn't over. Actually, it was almost over. I just needed one more piece of evidence to complete the picture I'd been building. That evidence came from an unexpected source, Renee. She called me Friday afternoon, which was surprising since we'd barely spoken during the entire time I'd been married to Maddie. Drew, it's Renee. Can we meet somewhere private? I have information you might find interesting. We met at a coffee shop across town, far from Maddie's usual social circle. Renee looked nervous, which was unusual for someone who typically approached gossip with the enthusiasm of an investigative journalist. Before I tell you this, she said, I want you to know that I never meant for things to go this far. What things? The affair, Greg and Maddie. I'm the one who introduced them. This wasn't particularly surprising, but I let her continue. What you don't know is that Greg and I were involved first, for about 6 months. Then he saw Maddie at my birthday party and decided he wanted something new. Now this was interesting. He dropped me for your wife, Renee continued. Just stopped returning calls, stopped answering texts, like I never existed. And you're telling me this because I want him to suffer the way he made me suffer, and because Maddie knew about Greg and me when she started pursuing him. She stole him deliberately. Renee pulled out her phone and showed me a series of text messages between her and Maddie from 2 months ago. Greg is so charming, Maddie had written. I can see why you were interested. Hands off, Renee had replied. I saw him first. Don't be selfish. You're not even divorced yet. I could actually leave Drew for someone like Greg. You're supposed to be my friend. I'm being a good friend by showing you that Greg isn't as committed as you think. The messages continued for several days, with Maddie systematically undermining Renee's relationship with Greg while positioning herself as a better alternative. She destroyed my relationship, Renee said, and now I want to return the favor. What do you have in mind? Maddie's planning something for this weekend. Some kind of public announcement about her new direction in life. She's been working with a photographer on what she calls authentic lifestyle content. What kind of announcement? I think she's going to reveal the affair and try to control the narrative. Make it seem like a romantic story about finding true love instead of a sordid tale about adultery and stolen money. This was perfect. Maddie was going to hand me the final piece of evidence I needed. When and where? Tomorrow afternoon. She's rented space at the Riverside Gallery for what she's calling an intimate gathering with close friends and followers. She's been promoting it all week as a major announcement about her personal brand evolution. I thanked Renee and spent Friday evening preparing for Maddie's public announcement. If she wanted to control the narrative, I'd make sure she had all the facts available. Saturday afternoon, I arrived at the Riverside Gallery 30 minutes before Maddie's event was scheduled to begin. The space was decorated with professional lighting and camera equipment, and about 50 people were milling around drinking wine and waiting for the main presentation. I recognized most of the crowd: Maddie's social media followers, local influencers, a few business contacts, and several people with cameras who were obviously there to document whatever Maddie had planned. Maddie appeared at exactly 2 p.m., looking perfectly styled and radiating confidence. She'd chosen her outfit carefully, elegant but approachable, expensive but not ostentatious. This was clearly meant to be her moment of transformation from scandal-plagued wife to independent woman taking control of her destiny. "Thank you all for coming," she began, speaking into a wireless microphone that projected her voice throughout the gallery. "I wanted to share this moment with the people who have supported my journey and believed in my authentic voice." The crowd settled into respectful silence. Several people were recording with their phones. "As many of you know, I've been going through some personal changes recently. My marriage to Drew is ending, and while that's been difficult, it's also been liberating." Murmurs of sympathy from the audience. "I've learned that sometimes we have to make hard choices to live authentically. Sometimes we have to risk everything to pursue genuine happiness." More supportive murmurs. Maddie was hitting all the right notes for her audience. "That's why I'm excited to announce that I'm launching a new phase of my personal brand, focused on helping women navigate major life transitions with grace and confidence." Applause from the crowd. "I'm also excited to share that I won't be navigating this transition alone. I've found someone who shares my values and supports my dreams." This was my cue. I'd positioned myself near the gallery's audio-visual control booth, and I'd spent the previous evening learning how to operate their projection system. As Maddie began introducing Greg as her new partner in both business and life, I activated the backup presentation I'd prepared. The main screen behind Maddie suddenly displayed a slideshow of her Instagram messages with Greg, including the ones where they discussed hiding their relationship from their respective spouses and using joint account money to fund their affair. The crowd went silent. Maddie turned around to see what had captured everyone's attention, and her face went pale as she read her own words projected in 3-foot-tall letters. "Someone knows my taste," appeared on screen, alongside a photo of an expensive hotel room. "Drew has no idea what he's missing," followed by Greg's response about Maddie's expertise in handling. "The money transfer went through. He'll never notice 18,000 missing." The crowd was no longer murmuring supportively. Several people were recording the screen with their phones. Others were whispering urgently to their companions. Maddie grabbed the microphone. "This is a private conversation taken out of context." The next slide showed bank records documenting the $18,000 transfer, along with timestamps proving it had been made without my knowledge or consent. "Someone is sabotaging this event," Maddie announced, her voice getting higher and more desperate. "That someone would be me," I said, stepping forward so the crowd could see me clearly. The reaction was immediate. Half the audience turned to stare at me, while the other half kept watching the screen, where a new slide was displaying Greg's business partnership agreements alongside photos of him and Maddie at expensive restaurants. "Drew, stop this right now," Maddie said into the microphone. "Stop what? Providing context for your announcement? I thought your followers deserved to know the complete story about your authentic journey." Greg appeared from somewhere in the back of the crowd, pushing through the audience toward the control booth. But Kate was already there, having positioned herself to prevent exactly this kind of interference. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "you're witnessing the authentic Maddie Taylor, someone who steals money from joint accounts to fund affairs with married men, someone who destroys friendships to pursue other people's relationships, someone who thinks authenticity means controlling which parts of the truth you get to see." The slideshow continued, displaying more messages, more financial records, and more evidence of the systematic deception that had characterized Maddie's recent behavior. "This is harassment," Maddie announced to the crowd. "My estranged husband is trying to humiliate me because I chose to leave him." "I'm not trying to humiliate you, Maddie. I'm just making sure your followers have access to the same information you've been sharing privately. Isn't transparency one of your core values?" The crowd was getting restless. Some people were leaving, clearly uncomfortable with the public confrontation. Others were staying to watch the drama unfold, their phones capturing every moment. Greg finally reached the front of the crowd. "Turn off the presentation, Drew." "I don't think so. Your business partners deserve to know how you've been spending their investment money." The current slide showed receipts from Greg and Maddie's various hotel stays and restaurant visits, cross-referenced with dates when Greg was supposed to be attending business meetings. "You're destroying people's lives," Greg said. "I'm revealing the truth about people's choices. There's a difference." Maddie was losing control of her carefully planned narrative. Her voice cracked as she tried to regain the audience's attention. "Whatever mistakes I've made, I'm trying to move forward and build something positive. With stolen money and other people's husbands," someone in the crowd called out. The event was collapsing into chaos. People were arguing among themselves, some defending Maddie and others expressing disgust at what they'd learned. The professional cameras were capturing everything, ensuring that Maddie's authentic moment would be preserved forever. That's when Renee stepped forward. "Since we're being authentic," she announced loudly, "everyone should know that Greg was having an affair with me before he started pursuing Maddie. And Maddie knew about our relationship when she decided to steal him." The crowd erupted. This was more drama than anyone had expected from a lifestyle influencer's brand announcement. Greg tried to leave, but the crowd was too dense and too interested in hearing more revelations. He was trapped in the middle of his own scandal. "This is insane," he said to no one in particular. "This is consequences," I replied. The slideshow reached its final image, a photo of Greg, Maddie, and Renee together at a restaurant 3 months ago, all smiling and apparently having a wonderful time, with a caption reading, "Some friendships don't survive authenticity." Maddie finally gave up trying to salvage the event. She dropped the microphone and pushed through the crowd toward the exit, with Greg following close behind. But the damage was done. Dozens of people had recorded the entire confrontation. The slideshow images were already being shared on social media. Maddie's attempt to control her narrative had become the most public possible exposure of everything she'd tried to hide. Kate appeared beside me as the crowd began to disperse. "Well," she said, "that was thorough. I told you I'm good at my job. What happens now?" I looked around the gallery, where small groups of people were still discussing what they'd witnessed and sharing photos of the presentation slides. Now they live with the consequences of their choices, publicly and permanently. My phone was already buzzing with notifications as the story spread across social media. Maddie's followers were sharing the images, local news outlets were picking up the story, and Greg's business associates were undoubtedly seeing everything in real time. By Monday morning, everyone in town would know exactly what kind of people Maddie and Greg really were, and I would finally be free to move on with my life. The storm was over.